Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in this busy, packed conference few days. It's really good to see everyone here. So welcome to our event on investigating how Labour can revive landscapes and protect communities by making space for water. I'm here representing the Riverscapes Partnership. So the Riverscapes Partnership is a coalition between the National Trust, Woodland Trust, Beaver Trust and the Rivers Trust. I work for the Rivers Trust. I'm Director of Communications and Advocacy, but today I'm representing the Making Space for Water campaign and the Riverscapes Partnership. We're waiting on John Craig, who's a few minutes late, so we'll start off with a few introductions, and he will join us when he gets here. And Minister Hardy will be here in the second half of the event. So if we get started, maybe I'd like to introduce, at the end of the row there, we have Isabella Murfin, who is the Director General of Country and CLA. I never quite know how you like to be introduced. So,
Country
Bella.
Land and Business Association.
Yeah.
We're an organisation that represents land owners and managers across England and Wales. We've got about 26,000 people in membership, and they own and manage around half of rural land in England and Wales.
And then next along, we have Lloyd Hatton, who is an MP, member of Parliament for Dorset South, and he has been our sponsor for the Making Space for Water campaign when we launched it in Parliament earlier on this year.
Yes, that's right. It was great to be able to kick off the parliamentary wing of this campaign and to see there was genuine broad cross-party support for this as well. And I think lots of people understand whether they're coming from a sort of nature recovery perspective or a business perspective or a climate and flooding management perspective. There's a real broad understanding across Parliament about the importance of this campaign.
Thank you very much. Cool. Now, John was going to start off by asking each of us what we thought Labour could do to revive landscapes and protect communities by making space for water. So stepping into his shoes, I will pose that question to these two. But maybe first of all, I shall also take the prerogative of answering that question for myself. So we know that rivers are in crisis. They've suffered from decades, in fact centuries of abuse. We've become disconnected from them. They've been straightened, narrowed, deepened, disconnected from the countryside and disconnected from communities. We've used them for pouring our waste into, and we've taken too much water from them. They're struggling, but they are part of our critical natural infrastructure. They are the blue threads that stitch together food resilience, climate resilience, public health, nature and local prosperity. We need them if we're going to thrive as communities into the future. Their resilience enables us to be resilient to climate change. They can help us to tackle and cope with extremes of water, both the flooding that we're seeing and the drought that we're seeing. If they and their catchments are healthy, then they enable us to deal with those challenges so much more. So making space for water is a simple unifying vision that brings together everything that we need on the land and on water. It's a no regrets action, and it reaches into every corner of our nations. Actually, you can't see it on there, but if you look at a map of our country just purely based on the rivers, you can see the full outline of our nations. They really do reach into every corner of the country, and they really do help us to thrive. So this action, restoring a network of nature-rich corridors along every river, every main river in our country, really does provide that blue luxury into every corner of the nation. And that is what we're looking for. So I would like to pose the question to Bella to start with. How do you think Labour can revive and protect communities by making space for water?
Thank you, Tessa. Do I need to turn this on? Can everyone hear me?
I think it should be on.
Okay. I think the first thing is really recognising that making space for water isn't just about river edges and riparian corridors and other watercourses. Our water is right across the landscape, and so all of the schemes and approaches that we take need to recognise the fact that from the uplands through to ponds, swales, ditches, reservoirs. We've got water right through the landscape, and we need to make sure that everything works together to ensure that it can be managed effectively. And that includes through agricultural land. And I did want to sort of highlight that soil health is a really key contributor to that. And so the government recognising the importance of soil health in its schemes and regulations is also very important. In terms of the specifics, I think the first thing is around making sure that both public and private finance is really available to pay for land managers to do the action that is going to support the public good of effective water management across the landscape, including things like flood water storage on farmland and other actions that support soil health. The next thing is then really properly recognising the role that nature-based solutions can play in this space, and doing that in the way that really gives certainty and proper funding trajectories to nature-based solutions to some of these problems. I have worked a lot in the trees area, and that's a great example. Planting trees and managing woodlands effectively, and field margins, trees and field margins, all really amazing ways that nature-based solutions can support the management of water through the landscape. But it's very difficult to make projects happen at scale that can protect whole cities in the case of something like the White Rose Forest without long-term certainty and funding security for those projects. And so that's the last strand of that I want to highlight at this point. It's around planning for the long term. Green infrastructure often isn't treated the same way as grey infrastructure. If you're building a nuclear power station, you'll have a 25 or 30 or even 40-year time horizon for your infrastructure project. If you're planting trees, you might be looking at 100 years ahead till that project is fully realised and providing all of those benefits to society. So it'd be really helpful to have a much more certainty around the policy and funding framework so that projects on using nature have more chance to succeed and get the traction that they need to happen in the first place.
Yeah, I think that seems to be key, doesn't it? That stability and that long-term view, because there are some amazing things going on across the country, but they're happening very piecemeal at the moment, and decisions change halfway through when you think you're getting somewhere on things. Lloyd, maybe you could give us your perspective from your constituency. And
well, I think for me, there's two bits of this which are really important. First is the policy itself. If we were to be able to win our campaign and have a serious change about how we connect up our river corridors and make space for water in that way, I think for a policy sense, for it to be effective, for it to work, and obviously you touched on this already, I think working with farmers and with landowners is essential. The thing won't work without a really effective strategy there. The interesting thing, actually, if I speak to farmers and landowners in my constituency, loads of them are doing really good stuff already. If they've got agricultural land that butts up against a riverway, lots of them doing it in their own kind of voluntary way. Mm. They are thinking, how can I adapt my farming practices and the way I manage and care for this land? So actually, it takes care of the riverway as well. So I think for me, us getting that collaborative approach is essential for this policy working. If that's what the government want to do. I think the other thing, though, is essential is understanding if we get this right, we are dealing with the major flooding challenge that we see right across rural England. And I think, particularly if we are going to see increased house building and the infrastructure that comes with it, which I welcome, but actually we have to think about how we deal with a growing flood risk in a more uncertain climate. So I think this policy, again, we need to make sure that we understand this is another reason why we're implementing it. It's actually about flood relief and dealing with that problem. And then finally, I think what's really important is one of the things the government have said time and time again is that we are saying the number one environmental issue that we think we can solve at home is about water pollution and declining water quality. And actually, we talk a lot about sewage spills along the coastline, but actually, unless we have a really aggressive strategy for how we clean up the quality of our water in our riverways, then we're not going to be able to actually across the board deal with with poor water quality. So that's another reason why, from a policy point of view, this really matters, this campaign. And then, if I may, the politics, which I think is also really important here. It to me feels like at the moment both the Tories and Reform UK have very little to say about water quality. I think the Conservatives are struggling because they're sort of reeling from having lost the last general election. On one of the issues that they were deemed to have lost it on was the sewage spill scandal, poor water quality, this idea that sort of big water companies and all the rest of it had been getting away with doing bad things for years and years and years. So I think they're in a really weak position for this. And then Reform UK just simply don't seem to have anything to say. I haven't seen a single Reform UK politician go out on TV or the radio or wherever and say, this is what we think about water quality. This is what we think about our riverscapes. And I think that's really, really interesting. And for me, it's incumbent that this Labour government picks up this campaign, listens to the arse, and then gets on with it, because the other parties right now just do not seem interested. I think it's absolutely essential that we lead that charge and we don't shy away from it. So for me, that's the two big things we've got to get right. The policies we've got to get right, but also the politics is important as well.
Yeah, it's really good to hear that, you see yourself as the party that can pick up and run with this, because, as I say, I think, it is a great collaboration between, land managers and the environment. And, there has such opportunity and tackles so many problems that we're facing. And as you say, that resilience and the ability to cope with floods and make space for water in the landscape for that is really, really key. John.
Apologies for being
Good to
late.
see you.
Lloyd, you just been obviously putting a Labour point of view.
Yeah.
The Minister is not with us yet, I see. Is she coming? I think
She is, yeah.
Good. Sorry? 1:30. Right, that's fine. Well, we'll quiz her when she gets here. You've spoken, obviously.
Yes, we've just sort of introduced ourselves and given our first thoughts on what this might do for the environment. And
you won your seat from the Conservatives. Did you beat Drax, did you?
I did. I had the
Richard
good fortune.
Drax. Yes, that's right, yeah. But that was a seat that was Labour, wasn't it? It was Jim Knight. Yeah, he's in the Lords now, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
He is,
It's nice to have a help around the corner.
Right. So this is entitled, as you probably know, How Can Labour Revive Landscapes and Protect Communities by Making Space for Water? Isabella, your organisation might be said to be pro-landowner, anti-rambler. I don't know.
I think
Anti-angler, I don't know. What's your take on improving, protecting communities, making space for water?
really supportive of making space for water, and our members are doing incredible things across the landscape to do exactly that, through agri-environment schemes, through permissive access along riparian corridors, and I think really support the principles of the campaign, particularly in recognising that to do that work, it does require investment and ongoing management, and we need to make sure that the foundations and structures are in place for that to happen.
But the privatised water companies, would you agree, are guilty of massive underinvestment?
I think we would look for blended finance. So we do
what does that mean?
So we want to see a blend of private and public funding to ensure that these actions can be taken right across the landscape. And there are some really good examples of that happening already with water companies around the country, but we want to see that scaled up.
But water companies get a very bad press, and many people would say deservedly so. Big bonuses, big profits, poor investment, pollution, and so on. I mean, are you convinced that they're doing all they should, the water companies, to invest in cleaning up rivers and so on, and all the other things?
Not sure it's helpful to try and point fingers and a lot blame. We're much more focused on building partnerships. Lloyd's just talked a bit about collaboration and partnership, and that seems to be the areas where we've seen the most success, where people come together at a local level with stakeholders who really understand the landscape and come up with solutions that work in that landscape. And we want to see more of that.
Can I just come in on that
yes.
as well? Yeah. So I mean, we are seeing in certain pockets, as I say, where communities and water companies and landowners and the conservation organisations are all working together to really make these kind of things happen. So I'm here representing National Trust, Woodland Trust, Rivers Trust and the Beavers Trust. There are other trust members I can see in the audience. And these things are happening. They're happening in places, but it's piecemeal. It's not joined up. It's not universal. And I think that is where we really want the government to sort of really kind of drive this kind of collaboration that does happen in places, but make it much more universal and across the board so that it happens in every corner of the country, not just where someone happens to decide to do something nice.
Lloyd, would you like to see the water companies renationalised? After all, the government's doing it with railways and Great British Energy and so on.
I don't really care whether or not they're in private hands or public hands. I just want them to stop illegally dumping sewage in our rivers along our coast. So I think for me, if the answer is improve regulation, enforce them when they get it wrong, and much more transparency about the way they operate, if that's what gets the right outcome, that's what I'm going towards. I do also think there's a risk if we look at a public ownership model for water around who carries the financial liabilities. We know that a lot of these big water companies have huge amounts of debt on their books, and where does that debt go? Does the taxpayer then suddenly become responsible for that? And is that something that we can, as a government, responsibly say is the right thing to do?
And the government would argue, and I think this is correct, that they have legislated tougher fines for polluters. Is that right?
Well, yeah, that's one thing, much tougher fines for polluters, but also I think the other big thing is about saying, actually, if you are a chief exec who is found to be in charge of a water company breaking the law when it comes to water pollution and illegal dumping, actually we can prosecute as well. I think that's, for me, is really important. But that's not about saying, look, you're a chief exec of a water company, we want to put as many of you as possible behind bars. It's about changing the culture and actually saying you are in charge of a huge company for massive environmental responsibility. Actually, if you are found to be breaking the law, you could find yourself in prison. And that actually is what you change the corporate culture overnight. And you've seen it elsewhere. You look at banking and finance, you change the culture by saying if you are found to be responsible for money laundering or for enabling tax evasion, you could find yourself in prison. And you find quite quickly those big banks want to change the way they operate. And I think you could have the same in the water industry as well.
Obviously, your constituency is very rural. Are there enough financial incentives to help farmers?
Well, yeah, this is the point we were saying earlier. Is I think for farmers and landowners, it does need to be made as simple as possible. Understanding there's a lot of frustration in farming at the moment, and I think there's a lot of people feeling like there hasn't been a great deal of certainty for the best part of a decade. And whether we're talking about financial support for doing the right thing by the environment, or with what's happened with Brexit and what the impact that's had on farmers. The list goes on and on and on about some of the huge inconsistencies and turmoil that's been facing farmers. They'll want to do the right thing by this, but they need to have easy and adequate financial support if they are going to play their part.
Before the Minister arrives, would anybody like to... yes, there's a hand up already. Oh, lots of hands. Right. Let's have a few questions or comments. So in the back row first, and then the lady just in front of you.
Thank you. Stuart Singleton-White, Head of Campaigns at the Angling Trust. So we certainly need to make space for water. We certainly need plenty of water. We certainly need clean water. From my point of view, fish need water. We need abundant fish stocks. We need abundant fishing. So we need that. But my question really is, in making space for water, we haven't just got to make space for water in a landscape sense. We've got to make space for water in a policy sense. And the problem with a lot of our thinking is it's and Tessa, you said about joining up, is water is not joined up across government. So we don't have water front of mind when we're building 1.5 million houses, or when we're building the data centres, which even under the current plan, not including the newer data centres that will come through, will consume as much water as the whole of the city of Liverpool that we're currently standing in. So we've got to make space for water in our thinking, in our policy, as well as in the management of our landscape.
So what would you like to see then? Your point is, I guess, that water affects more than just the Department of Environment. What would you like to see out?
So in a way, as we've got like a net zero for carbon, we need similar targets for water neutrality. So if you're building new houses, they shouldn't be consuming more water than is already being consumed in an area. So you're looking at things like water efficiency and water storage and effective methods like that, as well, and ensuring then that the landscape is protected. Because otherwise, what will happen? It's cheaper and easier to suck it out of the ground, and then we'll see our rivers drying up, and we'll see, that degradation of our land and our environment and our wildlife. So it's about thinking across the piece for water in the same way as we think across the piece for energy.
Thank you very much. Before I take the next question, and then you're next, anybody want to respond to that? To the anglers?
Only to say I think it makes absolute sense. Like so many of these massive strategic issues, they do need to be looked at right across the system, and these are systems issues. And I think this is where devolution offers both an opportunity and a threat. An opportunity in that it will mean local actors who really understand their own environment and community can be involved in planning and managing that environment. But a risk in that potential for a lack of join up becomes even larger, and that risk of siloed working meaning you could end up with unintended consequences. So I think it's going to be absolutely critical to get the route from the national policy framework through to local implementation right, which needs resourcing, actually.
Yeah.
I see Emma's just joined us. Before I ask you to catch up, let's just... did you want to say something very quickly? I'm going to take two more questions, then bring Emma in.
I mean, I was just going to say, we have a huge opportunity now in the development of the Water White Paper and looking at regional governance, which has the potential to really solve some of those problems and bringing things down to place-based catchment solutions. We need to make sure that we grab that opportunity.
Right, two questions. Yes, at the back, and then you're next.
Hi, I'm Clementine. I'm from Compass. We have a national campaign to put public water back into public hands. It's interesting that you pose the question of public ownership, because 82% of the country is for public ownership of water, and 92% of the Labour Party membership is for public ownership of water. People have talked about the fact that we are the only country in the world that still has fully privatized water. People are talking about the fact that we will save lots of money, that we can, strike off the debt of these companies because they're worthless, that the £100 billion figure that was quoted by the government over and over has been challenged by people who are experts in this field. But it still seems like the government and the Labour leadership are sort of ringing a dead ear to this cause.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask what the Wildlife Trust thinks of public ownership of water.
Okay, well, I'm going to take one more question and then we'll come to the panel for their responses on public ownership. Yes.
I can...
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Rebecca Wrigley from Rewilding Britain, and I'm really interested in some of the comments about looking at systems and taking an integrated approach. And the question is, it's so that you're not undoing something with one hand that you're doing with the other. Like you might be supporting farmers and landowners to do riparian restoration, to restore nature so that it captures water and it slows the flow. But the internal drainage boards might be doing something completely different. So the question is, how do we... I think we need a land use framework at a national level that sort of sets the frame for this. But then the question is, how do we set that up at the local level so that we have catchment partnerships that are actually enabled to make decisions and resourced to do so?
Okay. Go on then, one more question.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Hello, so Craig Bennett, Chief Executive of the Wildlife Trusts. The first thing I want to say is, as Wildlife Trust, we strongly support the need for much greater river corridors across this country, I find it hard to think of a single policy that would tick so many boxes about what's needed. You know, creating the backbone of nature recovery network, making us more resilient, not least to floods in the future as the climate changes, holding water back in the landscape to be more resilient during droughts, reducing soil erosion, reducing runoff of effluent into our rivers, and reducing flood risks. And of course, let's not forget that the Labour Party had in its manifesto a promise of 9 new river walks. And of course, this could absolutely be connected to this. So strongly support it and congratulate the campaign. Let's talk some more, Tess, about how we can work together on this, because it absolutely needs to happen. I do want to say a couple of other things, which is that this is in a context, though, sadly, of in the last year, all too often, from the very highest parts of the Labour Party, there has been a narrative from some that suggested it's a false dichotomy between growth and nature. And we really have to, this has to end. We need to recognise there's no such thing as economic growth if nature's in decline. You're certainly not going to get economic growth in this country if we haven't got enough water. So we need to have a consistent narrative, please, from the Labour government that says that we can grow nature and grow the economy hand in hand, and the two need to go together. The other thing I'd point out is, why have we got so much poo in our rivers at the moment? Yes, water companies, to an extent, they've done a lot of things that are wrong, but a lot of it goes back for us not enforcing the regulations properly. And a lot of it actually goes back, the real starting point for this was deregulation. And when Liz Truss was Secretary of State, she lent on the Environment Agency and others to say, ignore the regulations. All roads lead back to Liz Truss. But the point about this is there's a warning in there for this current Labour government, which parts of it is often talking about a deregulatory approach is important. Deregulation is why we've got poo in our rivers now. So I really hope this Labour government will remember that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, I'm sure Emma's raring to go. Welcome to Emma, Minister for Water. Did the job in opposition as well. MP for Hull West and Hessel, have I got that right?
Mine will be changed to Holton Price now, but it was Hull West.
Yeah.
It's close enough, don't we?
Okay, a few questions there. Emma, are you ready to go? Let's from privatisation to poo. Some would say the two things are similar. Anyway, it was Michael Howard who privatised water, wasn't it, when he was an environment minister back in, it was 89, wasn't it, when Thatcher was still Prime Minister? Yeah. Anyway, why not renationalise, Emma?
I think, yeah, and just to say hi, everyone, and it's good to see some people in the room that I recognise as being campaigning on some of these issues for a really long time, so really nice to see you. Apologies I couldn't be here for the very beginning. We do get asked about nationalisation a lot, and so I say with the greatest respect, one of the reasons we published our breakdown on costings is to try and answer that question more fully. So about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we published up on the government website a sort of a technical paper explaining where we got the calculation for the cost of nationalisation from. And the simple answer to why not nationalise is because of the cost of nationalisation. And I fundamentally think that the problem we have is a problem of poor regulation, that we have had deregulation, we have had poor regulation in this country. And I think if we fix the problems around regulation, we'll fix many of the problems that we're seeing in the country now. And the great thing is there's a huge opportunity to do that. I mean, we've had the review, we've had the John Cunliffe's report. We're talking about, I think I walked in on a bit of a conversation around regional systems planners, which I get incredibly excited about. And I'm hoping in a room of other people that get incredibly excited about that too. And how can we work on delivering what we need? And I like to think about the language of management of water. Let's think about how are we managing water within this space, within this catchment, thinking about it in terms of flooding, in terms of integrated approaches to dealing with water, because there are ways in which you can deal with actually through SUDs and looking at those things you can deal with water, which actually prevents some of the pollution incidents that you have through the storm overflows. You know, there's a whole way, and I think there's a more intelligent and exciting way of sort of looking at the management of water and having that more integrated approach. And I absolutely think we can win for nature and win for growth. 100% we can do both. I mean, even on the question of, I don't think sometimes as a society it's fully understood outside of obviously the great and the good in this room that the difficulties we are going to have in the future around water and not having all of the water that we need. I mean, building the houses that we need needs water. Everyone uses the example of data centres, but even not data centres, even if we're looking at growing food in a different way, we're going to need more water. Look at what the farmers have just been through, where they've had a winter full of flooding, where they haven't been able to grow their food, and then they've had a drought summer as well, which has impacted the root vegetable harvesting and impacting the crops as well. So I think we need to think about water differently and think about water as being more precious maybe than we've previously seen it in that way. I mean, and on one side, I'm an optimist at heart, so I like to think that, yes, there are huge problems, but there's also huge opportunities to fix things and improve things and work on making them better. And of course, we want our river walks and we want to do all of those other exciting things to promote and have nature. And I don't see them in competition, because, yes, we need the water, but actually, okay, let's think about something as basic from my own constituency about the aqua greens that we've just created. So we've just done a Living with Water project, which is Yorkshire Water, the Environment Agency and the local council creating aqua greens where I live. Now, that's a win for flooding, so everybody's quite pleased. They're not going to get their homes flooded. It's a win for nature, because actually they're lovely biodiverse spaces that are in the middle of an urban environment where no space like that previously existed. And it's a win for growth, because it means you can have more things that are going to be built if you're not concerned about there being flooding. And it's a win for pollution as well, because actually if you hold some of that rainwater in the aqua green, it's not entering the combined sewage overflow system, and it's not ending up out on the storm overflow. So there are wins. And I think one of the things I was so sort of keen and excited about, and I need to be careful not to say too much because we are responding officially to our flood consultation, but you will have noticed, those of you who read the document, the natural flood management being such a big feature. And I think what a perfect example of how we can win growth and how we can win for nature, in that natural flood management means that we're dealing with some of the flooding problems so we can have the development we need, but it also means that, great, isn't this really good for nature and biodiversity as well? So, I mean, there's loads of opportunities. So yes, there are problems and the difficulties, which I don't underestimate, but there are also great opportunities to do things in a different way. And so our white paper is due to be out, will be out this year. We're looking at future legislation going forward. I've tried to, as the new minister, even though I accept not everyone might agree with everything I do, but I've tried to approach politics in a slightly different way and be as open as possible. And that's why I recognise so many people in the room, because you've been engaging with the department, and long may that continue, because what we want to do is set good policy that's there for the future and delivering on everything we need. So thanks for having me. I'll stop. I could go on for ages, but I will stop.
One person who's not in the room is the great Fergal Sharkey, who's been a brilliant campaigner, in my view, against dirty rivers and so on. He would probably say that, OK, whilst you just listed a lot of things the government's doing, you ought to be doing a lot more. What would you say to the likes of Fergal Sharkey, who say you need to move faster and do more?
Well, after I got his autograph, I reminded him of how much I loved him. No, he has been an incredible campaigner, and one, and lots of people have, and I think that's okay. And I think sometimes in politics and life, we worry about people who challenge us to do more. I mean, I was a trade unionist before I was a politician, and I worked for the National Union of Teachers, and at the time we didn't always agree with everything being done or said. So I have no issue with people being political friends and saying you should do more and you should move harder on this, because I think they're passionate and have every right to do that. All I will say is that we are trying and we are working on this. It is something that's incredibly personally important to me, representing an area that floods all the time, but also as somebody that just, is it so sad to say, loves nature and therefore actually wants to see an increase in nature and biodiversity.
The Liberal Democrats would say that they've been leading the fight against pollution in rivers, whilst Labour's been a bit sluggish and dragging its feet.
I'm sure they would, bless them. I'm sure they would, as when they fall off a board. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, the more people that are campaigning for this, the better, so why not?
You sound as though you wanted to say something about that.
Oh, just in the Liberal Democrats say a great many things, but it doesn't mean necessarily that. I think, the reality, I think we've seen 14, 15 months now of the Labour government, and whether it is looking at fines or prosecuting or actually the tough enforcement side of things. We are trying to change an industry which has had extensive deregulation, I think, and the environment has been the main casualty of that deregulation. I think actually with some of the really big tough bits of enforcement that we've seen brought in by this government is exactly what we said we'd do before the election, and we've got on with it straight away. The Lib Dems might have said they were going to do it as well, but it actually has been a Labour government that's got on with that, and I welcome it.
Isabella and Tessa, do you want to add to anything that you've heard from the Minister?
I mean, I think, for us, we're looking for solutions. There's been a lot of blame game. There's been a lot of, and people have done bad things. Organisations have performed badly. Regulation has been very, very weak. Now is the opportunity to turn that all around. And that's really what we're looking for, is where the solutions are, where we can actually make a difference. And I think this is a great opportunity. We have many opportunities at the moment. And the more that we can agree on things and work together, then the greater chance we have of actually delivering rivers that are healthy and fit for the future and can, help us to face a changing climate and increasing population and AI, challenges, data and AI centres and all the other things that are going to, trip us up.
Isabella?
Yeah, I guess, and for all of the potentially big steps forward for land managers, landowners who are trying to do the right thing. At the moment, they're in a bit of hiatus because of what's happened on agri-environment. A lot of the interventions, things like buffer strips at the moment, sit across multiple schemes, and those schemes are on pause. We don't know what's coming next. We've got some people who've been in agri-environment agreements for 25 plus years who don't know what they're going to do at the end of this year when those come to an end. And that need for certainty is absolutely vital if you're going to get people to do the right thing. It isn't just about the macro level strategies, it's about the individual farm business on a tiny, tiny margin that can't afford to do this stuff without the public investment. And so I would plea for certainty in that space so that people can continue to do the good things that they've been doing and build on that for the future.
Public investment, Emma?
I think these are a great point. So yes, let's look at the solutions, and I think that's what I really want to focus is thinking about, especially the regional systems planner, their role. How is that going to work? How is that going to deliver? What the relationship is going to be like with the catchment partnerships? What's the relationship going to be like in terms of land management with the local farmers, with everybody sort of involved in the water environment in that area? How is that jigsaw and piece going to work, which is a live thoughts now, so please do feed in any thoughts on that. And I hear your point around a certainty. I have to apologise, not being the farming minister, I'm not as aware of all of the different agreements, but I can certainly take that back, the need for certainty. I do understand, and I just want to repeat my point about what a difficult time the farmers have had. And one of the things I'm quite excited thinking about is, if we're thinking about the management of water and we're thinking about farming and the farming sector, is I was interested in hearing about some of the initiatives that some farmers have done around storing water on their own land, and how we can enable them to do that, to have that greater a level of resilience. And I think that's something, as our climate's changing, we need to be thinking about water resilience, as well. I think we're going to be seeing more of this, drought, flood, unfortunately become the norm in this country. And so how do we, from my point of view, even I'm not the farming minister, but how do we ensure that farmers have what they need to be able to grow, and how do we therefore unlock some of the barriers that there have been around storing water on farms and reservoirs and things like that?
Which will be fantastic. Easier said than done. Yes. I think the thing to avoid, though, is introducing a new layer of bureaucracy. It's actually really hard to navigate the permitting system at the moment, to understand the logistics of taking some of the actions and making some of the interventions. Getting an on-farm reservoir built at the moment is far harder than it should be.
Yes.
We want to see that regionalisation of water management give agency to people in a way that is efficient and makes it much, much quicker to get good stuff done.
Farmers might say that you've lost their goodwill with the inheritance tax changes.
Well, as I say, I'm always an optimist, and if we've lost goodwill, let's hope we regain it.
Okay, good answer. Right, I've got lots of hands here. Right, number 1 here, 2 there, and then 3 and 4 at the back.
Hello, I'm Heather from FIDRA, and one of the biggest threats that our rivers face is from chemical pollution, and we know that English rivers are failing to meet good chemical status. And just this week, we know that the EU has updated their pollutant list for the Water Framework Directive, and we're also seeing more and more restrictions coming through on chemicals all the time in the EU. And what are we going to do here in the UK to get restrictions on chemicals going? We've only seen the one so far, and it's still not quite through yet. So how are we going to get those restrictions on chemicals so that we're stopping them at source from getting into the water?
Right, next. I'll take 3 or 4 questions and then.
Great, thank you. I'm Jenna Hegarty from the Nature Friendly Farming Network. It was to kind of just build on and really reinforce that point about certainty, particularly through publicly funded farming schemes. So the certainty that has been essentially taken away or undermined through the pause to SFI last year and the kind of the very real gap facing a number of farmers, I think is a major issue in its own right. But I think it is very, very significantly undermining, I think, farmers' confidence in the broader transition. And that has to be one of the most important things that this Labour government takes forward, makes a success and embeds. And I appreciate you're not the farming minister. We've obviously got a brand new farming minister. We've got a new Secretary of State. So your championing of, fixing that issue as soon as possible. And one of the kind of immediate solutions we can have is rolling over for a 12-month period those who are in mid-tier schemes or the kind of CS agreements, so that we don't lose that A, goodwill, and B, that environmental delivery. And then it's about making sure that we've got new schemes, a replacement for the SFI scheme as soon as possible. It's about making sure that we're supporting farmers to invest in their soil across their land so that it is able to hold water as well as it possibly can, because that is vital.
I'm going to take two from there were 2 at the back, and I've spotted a few more, but I'll just take 2 more for now, and then we'll have some answers. So first question about chemical pollution, second was about farming schemes.
Hi, I'm Tessa. I'm a journalist from ENDS Report. We've been talking about how regulation needs to be enforced to improve water quality. And Emma Reynolds, the new DEFRA secretary, said recently that she wants to be tough on regulators. And I know she's only just in the job, but I wondered if you could give a steer on what that might actually mean for regulators like the EA, who, already, they would say, underfunded from lots of angles. And also, can you give a timeline for the super regulator that Steve Reed announced a while ago?
Thank you. And there was a gentleman there in the middle.
Thank you. Yeah, Alex Veach, I'm the Chief Exec of the Confederation of Paper Industries, representing 59,000 staff making paper and cardboard, and hearing AI as a user of water, absolutely true. So is paper and advanced manufacturing in the UK. My question actually follows on really nicely from the previous one. Our members at paper mills, 47 paper mills all across the country, are users of water, are very tightly regulated, and rightly so. Please come and see, Minister, one of the mills in action to see how it works and how it interacts with the river environment. Would love to work with this campaign, if possible, to engage the business community that uses river water. There are many others that do, like brewers and others. But actually, my question is more direct. I mean, we think the Environment Agency is really stretched. It's under stress. We'd love to see that agency be able to fulfil its duties with the right level of resource. And I wondered if you have a perspective on that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Right, let's have some answers. Well, I think probably one for you. You kick off, Minister.
Yes. Which one?
Well, chemical pollution, farming schemes, regulation. Emma Reynolds, what she said. I think that was an interview. I read an interview with her. Was it the I newspaper? I think I read it.
Yeah.
And the Environment Agency being stretched was number 4.
Okay, so on chemical regulations, yes, really interested in what's happening in Europe and the chemicals that they're restricting. I've been having a look at that, having conversations in DEFRA at the moment. Particularly, to be honest, I've focused in terms of chemicals at the moment, my time around PFAS and looking at PFAS. How does PFAS get into the water? What are the sources of the...
Sorry?
Oh, apologies. I'll try and... I'll lean in. Yesterday I was at Zero. Actually, the microphone didn't work there. Maybe this is a theme of the conference, or someone's trying to tell me something. So yes, I am looking at what they're doing and what they're restricting and how. But I'm also particularly at the moment looking at PFAS and looking and understanding how does PFAS get into the water? Where do we find evidence of PFAS? But actually, historic contamination from our old industrial heritage of land and PFAS. So it's a live issue with me. I can't sort of give you firm answers at the moment, other than to say that I am aware and looking into it. So hopefully offer you some reassurance that it is on my agenda. And then a new farming minister, yes, absolutely, new farming minister, new Secretary of State. I know that they want to sort of reset relationship with the farmers. I know that she's been out on a visit, meeting the farmers and meeting representatives. And I completely accept your point about quality soil, holding water, and how it helps with absolutely everything. And I'll certainly, as I say, pass back that point around certainty. And on the sort of roles of the regulators, I kind of, I feel the regulators sometimes, the environment agencies, get a bit of a hard time, but I actually think we have people there doing an amazing job, and sometimes we don't thank them enough or sort of credit them with the work that they're doing. We gave them a target around water inspections, which they're set to meet and hit. We've increased the funding for the Environment Agency. And of course, through the Water Special Measures Act, we've got that money that will go back into the water sector through the fining system, which was the polluter pays principle, that if the cost of regulating and enforcement, that money, that cost should be charged to the company and then be recouped by, by the Environment Agency. So not only have we increased the direct funding to the Environment Agency, but we've also enabled the Environment Agency through the polluter pays principle to get more money from some of the more polluting industries so it can fund some of its work. And it's doing, a lot more. It's doing a lot more of the water inspections. It means it's uncovering a lot more problems, but we're aware of them now. And if you're aware of them, you can do something about it. So I'm grateful to the Environment Agency for all of the work that they're doing. On the timeline for the super regulator, so officially, because all of these are set up through statutory regulation, so officially you can't have the new regulator until you pass new legislation to remove the statutory duties of the previous one. So the official new regulator will start after we have the legislation passed through Parliament. However, obviously we're working now on whether you could create some sort of shadow cooperative, building up towards, so that by the time you pass that regulation, you have a system sort of ready to go. But so my official answer to you is when the legislation passed is when the new regulator is officially created. But of course, we want to be looking at having that, smooth transition from the system we have now into the new regulator, and how can we enable, as smooth as transition as possible, and looking at greater collaboration, greater working together of some of the different regulators that are involved in this space. And again, there's some of the things that we're talking about right now. I think I did them. Yes. Thanks.
And Angela Eagle's the new farming minister, isn't she?
She is. Yes. Yeah. She's fabulous. I love her. I sat next to her on the Treasury Select Committee for a few years, and she is awesome, and never anyone I ever want to fall out with.
Anybody quickly before I go back to some more questions? No, more questions. Got lots of hands up here. Right, 2 in the middle there, then 2 there. Oh, and sorry, I keep missing you. Ashley, where's the microphone? Sorry.
Thank you. That was a bit slow, that. Can I?
Right, the 2 in the middle.
It's yours. Maybe the same question.
Short and snappy, because time's getting on.
So my question was whether I could get a little bit more detail on the super regulator, and whether the super regulator was going to be replacing the regulators around the water companies, or whether that was going to take the regulation around water of agriculture as well, because we work on nitrogen, and you have big pollution swapping potential from only looking at water as a regulator.
Okay, next please.
Hello, my name is Monica. I work for WWF. Wanted to say we love this initiative, or fully supportive, and we're official supporter as well. And one of the things that Tessa said was that one of the main issues is there are so many good things happening, but it's piecemeal and siloed, and you kind of need to scale it up. And then obviously, in terms of the policy level, Emma, you're well aware, I know you appeared in front of the nitrogen inquiry as well, and did a brilliant job showcasing your knowledge. But an issue that we often find is you obviously have the farming minister. At that point, Daniel appeared alongside, we've got Angela, Secretary of State, kind of has this oversight. But then there's also many really important things that sit with Mary Cray in terms of the circular economy, in terms of the ERP reform. And I'd be really interested to hear what you're going to do both in the space of this partnership, but also those wider issues, especially when we look at agricultural pollution to have that necessary join-up.
Two very, very quickly, and you're going to be last, I'm afraid, because it's time's coming.
Do you mind if I jump in very quickly and be sneaky?
Go on, quickly.
Just a clarification for Emma. You spoke about the response to the FUD funding formula consultation. Did you say that was coming by the end of this year? Okay, thank you.
Okay, was this lady here, and then two at the end, and that's the last ones, and then we'll have a quick summary from everyone.
Hi, I'm Chloe from ChemTrust. Just a quick clarification again on the chemicals, just to build on what Heather said earlier. We've been calling for a commitment in the EIP to align with the EU. Won't go into the reasons now. We're really scared as well about the two connected things of what could happen without this commitment to boldly, clearly commit to align with the EU. The Health and Safety Executive just closed a consultation which gives them the powers potentially to adopt decisions from anywhere in the world, and combined as well with the idea that hopefully there'll be a Labour government after this as well. But what could a Jacob Rees-Mogg, what could a reform government do with chemical regulation if it's too vague and we're still talking about closest trading partners? Is that the US? Is that Kazakhstan?
Right. Okay. Somebody just passed the microphone back, and I'm going to ask you in a minute because it's 5 to 4. Very, very short questions, please, and then a minute each.
Super quick. A companion piece to that brilliant report, Campaign for National Parks, Rivers at Risk report, worked with the Rivers Trust, which shows that national parks should be the best water spaces, but they're not. In many cases, they're in an appalling state. And so, Minister, whole suite of measures, but the regs on the lure duty, the commitment's gone quiet for about 8 months. We haven't heard anything. And also, we're even hearing nasty rumours that the government are going to gut the lure duty itself, which I know they won't want to do. Wilder and Green in national parks.
Hand the microphone to the gentleman next to you, please.
Henry from Surfers Against Sewage. Lloyd, what is your feeling from a backbenches around sewage? Are you feeling optimistic?
He's against
the government.
Right. Who wants to go first? 1 minute each. Go on, you go first.
Okay, yeah. So, we just want to reiterate that we would like government support for making space for water, and we would like to see that put through with some clear targets, but also for clear, easy to understand, easy to access incentives for landowners so that they can actually deliver on this. We'd also like to ask for a meeting to talk to you, Angela Eagle and Mary Cray together, because it's a very cross-cutting policy. So to talk to the three of you together would be really useful.
There you go. There's an invitation. Lloyd, there was a question direct to you there, wasn't there?
Yes, but I'll just take one quick other point first. I think what was really interesting about sort of the nature-friendly farming network, I've got lots of members in my constituency and NFU members and others as well, and they all really want this to work, and actually there is a lot of support for this campaign, and lots of them in their own special way already do what they can, and they're almost sort of they're moving quicker than government is on this, and they understand the problem with the deteriorating water quality. So I think we need to catch up with them, and I think it's really important that government do back this campaign, and it's us, and actually we can start learning from them. Henry, on your point, I think the government's doing a really, really good job, particularly around enforcement. I think this whole idea that actually the water industry for a really long time has basically been able to get away with just about anything, and indeed everything. I think that culture is stopping. I think the stuff we've seen around fines and then recycling those fines, I think that's really welcome. I think that the idea about moving towards prosecutions and that culture change, I think that's really welcome. I'd like to see us go further. I think that's why I'm supporting this campaign, and it was why I sort of launched the campaign in Parliament a few months back. It's also why I'm saying we should have all year round water quality testing at every bathing site in the country. That's just about to finish today, tomorrow. So all of those bathing spots across the country, the nicest ones of which can be found in my constituency. I don't tell a word of a lie. Those that they're no longer going to be tested all winter, but people still go out there angling, rowing, swimming, walking the dog, all of that kind of stuff. I think the testing should be all year round, so we have a better idea and we're more informed as water users.
Isabella, 1 minute.
Briefly, I just want to celebrate the success. What happens when you do invest in agri-environment schemes and good agricultural practice over, since the early 90s, phosphate reduction's been 70% in farming, potash 70%, nitrogen down by nearly half. It's even more marked in grassland farms. But without that continued investment support and partnership with farmers and land managers, we won't see that built on for the future. Absolutely echo the calls for joining up, because this is complex and this is a systems-wide approach. And so the CLA would be delighted to join that meeting, that joint meeting with the ministerial team, to talk about how land managers and landowners across the country can help.
And last word, Minister.
Oh gosh, 1 minute.
In
Right.
1 minute.
I'll go as quickly as I can.
15:59.
Right, ready, go. So the response to the Lord's inquiry into nitrogen, I was just signing off and editing this week. So it's arriving. So that should answer all of your questions on everything that we're going to be doing on nitrogen, because I literally was just editing it. What day was it? Sunday. So I don't know when it's going to be published, but it is coming soon, our response to the nitrogen inquiry, and that will answer all of your questions. Chloe, I share your fears of the nightmare future that could possibly be, but that's why we're here celebrating Labour at a Labour conference and why we need another Labour government. Whoop. So hopefully we can all get behind that. And I hear your point. I mean, we are not looking to be the dirty man of Europe again. We are not looking for that in the slightest. We're looking for a system that works for our country, and you'll be... Obviously, the EIP is still in production. We're still sort of working through some of that. And obviously, you'll be aware that there's still conversations ongoing around the EU reset. So, all of this is hugely live. And I realise I'm being frustrating and not able to give you as clear as answers as I'd really like to. And on the questions around meeting, I think one thing I would hope people would say that since I've become a minister is I've been really keen on the co-production thing. I made a deliberate point to turn the department out-facing and to invite people to come in and have that more interaction, because I don't claim to be the expert in every area, but I know people who are. And in terms of those meetings, we've got roundtables coming up, looking at it. We're also looking at developing the white paper. We want to hear from that level of expertise, because we want to have that good policy. Now, I can't commit my other ministers to meetings, because that would be hugely unfair. But of course, I am available if you want to sort of pick that up and take that forward, because I think having those conversations, I'm particularly interested in, because I haven't got all my everything worked out as how this will work, but I know I have the idea, is how are we going to make this work on a regional level?
Okay.
That's the exam question.
Thank you very much. Big round of applause to the panel. Thank you all for coming.